This is One on One. Welcome to One on One. I'm Steve Adubato. I want to introduce you to a good friend of ours that we want to have on the show for a while. He's Jim McHugh. How you doing, Jim?
Steve, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, too.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Jim, you and I not only are golf partners, and you beat me on a regular basis, but that's not the reason you're here. You're here to talk about your brother John, who fought very bravely for this country, but on May 18th, 2010, gave up his life for this country fighting in Afghanistan.
Correct.
Talk to us.
John was a colonel in the U.S. Army, got deployed he was stationed out of Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, the Battle Command and Preparation Center, and his role was to kind of go out like a coach would go scout an opponent and see what the tactics were going on or what was going on the field, and then come back and change the game plan for those who were going to be deployed
right
a little bit later. Let's
right
picture him with General David Petraeus at the time from Kuwait. And so he was over there on one of his missions to kind of see what's going on the ground, and then he would come back, and the next group to be deployed at the time was coming from Fort Drum, New York, and he would adjust the training regiments here to be consistent with what the tactics were on the ground. And he arrived in Kabul, Afghanistan, and typically they would fly from the airport to Bagram Air Base where they were headquartered, and a couple days prior to his arrival, the Bagram airfields were bombed and were no longer accessible, so they had a convoy from Kabul airport to heading to his base, and a suicide bomber saw this Army convoy, drove up next to the convoy and set off about 2,000 pounds of explosives. And my brother, 4 other U.S. soldiers were killed, a colonel from the Canadian Army, and 17 civilians.
Describe, your brother John was 46?
46 when he passed.
He had how many children?
5.
5.
Yeah.
And a grandchild.
He did. He got to know his granddaughter for about a month prior to his deployment over to Kabul.
Brothers and sisters on your end?
I have a younger brother,
Right.
Frank, who's 2 years younger than me, and I have an older sister. And John was the 4th in the family. He
And
was
your
the
mom
youngest.
and dad there too?
Mom and dad, they're still hanging in there too. They're still alive.
I remember when John passed, and the reaction on the part of those who are in your world and in John's world and all these different connections. The reaction was overwhelming. I want you to describe for folks who John was and the way he lived his life, which is why you are here today, and part of a series that we are doing, just really remembering those who have given their lives and trying to remember not just who they were and why they're important, but who they leave behind.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you mentioned, he was married and had 5 children. I think over time, especially when we get, when the United States is involved in a conflict that maybe extend 10, 12 years, we sort of become desensitized to the headlines.
Sure.
We read a story and hear a couple servicemen killed, and it's like, that's a shame, but we really don't stop and think about what's behind that story. And it is a real family. It's a father of 5. His son Michael, my nephew Michael, also in the Army. He was deployed in Baghdad at the time of the news of his father's passing. My niece Kelly just graduated Kansas State. She's a sports editor for the Kansas State newspaper. Kristen, the middle daughter, she's at Liberty University in Virginia studying Christian counseling. Maggie just turned 15, is in high school, just getting her driver's permit down in Alabama. And David is 8, the youngest in the family. And John would like to know too that he also just not too long ago had a second granddaughter. Wow. By his son Michael. So there's a real family behind these headlines. And John was a guy that was really steeped in 3 things. Family. There was no doubt his family came first in everything. His faith. He had a tremendous, strong faith in God. And he loved the United States Army. And on top of that, he was a pretty good athlete over the years too. Loved to play sports. He was, I think he was all-state soccer from here in the state of New Jersey, and either all-county and second team all-state in baseball. He's a pretty good baseball catcher back then too.
It's interesting. This series is called aptly Gone But Not Forgotten. And this is the first of a series of conversations we're having with family members of United States military men and women who we have lost in service to the country. And we do forget too quickly. And we're going to try not to do that here by talking to people like Jim And because Jim and I have a close personal relationship, it was easy to have you come in. But the other part of this, Jim, is that there are organizations out there that fight every day to not forget. And I want you to talk about two of them.
Sure.
And we're going to put up, Jackie Cook, our producer, if you could, let's put up the website that you were talking about, the first one.
Yeah, Gold Star Mothers.
Gold Star Mothers,
Yeah,
go ahead.
President of the Gold Star Mothers of New Jersey, Judy Tapper. Tremendous lady. Her son was a Navy SEAL who was taken way too soon. And she's tried to take this experience and become a resource for other mothers who have lost children, son or daughter, and become a resource to provide any sort of additional support services that these families have.
What do they need, Jim?
I think they need reassurance at times. I think they need to constantly hear that their son or daughter will not be forgotten.
Do they think we have forgotten them?
Maybe at times. I can't say consistently across the board whether they do or not, because I think perhaps in the past, when in a different political environment, maybe in the 60s and 70s.
Your brother's family. John's family. Do you think John's brother's family thinks? I mean, you know them best. They are your nieces, nephews, your sister-in-law, and your mom, your dad.
Right.
You. Do you think, does your family think that we as a country have forgotten?
I do not think that. And I do not think my family thinks that way. My brother was also a West Point graduate and a colonel, so he had many more years' experience. But I don't know what the family reaction is to, let's say, a very young service person or much younger with less experience. I can't vouch for what they may be going through. But the fact that these organizations are out there to help you, I think are a great source of comfort during times.
And people should use them.
Absolutely, they should. They provide, the Gold Star Moms sponsor something last Sunday in September every year called the New Jersey Run for the Fallen, where they have servicemen for each branch of the service run from Cape May to the Vietnam Memorial at the Arts Center. And they stop 1 mile every mile along the way. They stop and honor another fallen from New Jersey. So families can actually see where their family member's monument is, and the soldiers will stop on their run, honor the family, thank you for your service, and then they're off to the next mile. And it's done over a full weekend. It lasts in September. It's great.
Jim, why, you and I have had this conversation for a while, Why did you want to do the show, other than the fact that I asked you?
Because I'm proud of him. I'm proud of my brother. I'm the oldest in the family, oldest brother in the family. And you always think as the oldest brother, there's 5.5 years age difference. You want to protect your little brother. He was always the youngest around. That's John on the upper right. Myself, my brother Frank, and my sister. And you always want to protect your younger brother. And so here, a situation where at 18 years old, he goes off and becomes part of a different family. He goes up to the military academy, and where he's part of the McHugh family and hanging out in the neighborhood and playing ball and doing all that stuff, he's now part of a different family. And it becomes a much different relationship once he becomes part of the military academy family and the Army family. And so you're still able to maintain those relationships. But you realize maybe what you want to do to protect your brother, you're not in control of that anymore. Somebody else is. But I will never forget him. He'll always be in my thoughts. I think of him every day. I talk to him every day.
You do?
And yeah, I do. I do.
And right there on your right wrist, you have that, and I got you to give me one of those, and I wear mine every day as well.
Yep.
Show folks what that is. Bob Morris, can we get this, Kip, shooting over here? Can we get this?
It's just called a hero bracelet, where I just, it's got his name on it, New Jersey, Army, and then his passing on May 18th of 2010. I don't know.
We see it.
People think of, you try to think, are there other messages or is there a higher authority governing things? And I certainly believe it is the case. But it's been an interesting series of events around the date, May 18th. He was killed May 18th, 2010. We have the funeral out. He's buried out in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where he was deployed from. And we go back to his house after the funeral service there, and we open up his yearbook, class of '86, senior yearbook at West Point. His senior portrait's on page 518.
Wow.
And most recently, my older son was looking for an apartment, and he got turned down for one in West Orange, got to his apartment, got approved for an apartment in Morristown. The address is number 518.
When did his daughter graduate?
She graduated this past May, on May 18th.
I was just going to say.
So,
something about that date.
Yeah.
You think John's looking down?
There's no doubt in my mind he is.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no doubt. I think he was a tremendous soccer fan. I think he'll be looking down at the World Cup this year in Brazil, watching it. Big Bayern Munich rooter in the German league.
He's proud of his big brother, I know that.
We try. We try to keep his honor and his thoughts and his memory alive.
Hey, Jim, I want to thank you for being with us.
Steve, I appreciate the opportunity, and to all the other families that have had this experience. On behalf of the McHugh family, you will never be forgotten, and we thank you for your son or daughter's service.
It's the other way around. We owe your family, we owe all the families who have given so much, gone, but definitely not forgotten, and the first of many interviews. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you, buddy. Okay, stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Russell Berry Foundation, Caldwell College, the Fidelco Group, Fedway Associates, New Jersey Sharing Network, Kessler Foundation, and by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, founded by the Jewish community. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System.